Welcome back, and welcome backstage. Now, one of the striking aspects of the new production of La Bohème is that the scene changes happen before our very eyes. This uses the traditional technology of people pushing things on wheels, which has been around since the very beginnings of opera in Italy at the end of the 16th century. Now, the Victoria and Albert Museum is just a few stops down the Piccadilly line from Covent Garden Tube Station, just outside the theatre. The Royal Opera House has collaborated with the V&A to create a brand new exhibition all about opera across the ages. Just before it opened, we popped in to visit the curator Kate Bailey to find out a bit more about how set and costume design have developed over the years.
Set design, costume and technology has been at the heart of opera. Since its birth in Italy, opera has been a multimedia entertainment. It's been about the kind of bringing together of drama, voice, music, singers and the spectacle. Our exhibition's called Opera, Passion, Power and Politics, and every opera has a lot of passion and a lot of sex. And this is a dancer's costume from Les Fêtes Vénitiennes. It shows not just the spectacle of opera, but it shows how Venice and courtesans can inspire productions. It's wonderfully rich, lots of different shades of red, very, very theatrical. It would have been worn by a dancer. She would have been able to lift the front of the panel of the skirt up to reveal the legs. Actually, this costume was worn by a man. But what you also see here in this rather amazing book, like a pop-up book, you can see how the Venetian women dressed with their Chopin shoes and these sort of skirts that lift up. Amazing to also be able to show an original pair of Chopins. So these are the shoes that would have been worn by Venetian women. I think they're about 24 inches tall. You couldn't really walk in them in the streets, but it kept your skirts clean. So there's lots of layers going on here, and it just shows how important costumes and influences of costumes are to opera. Here we are in London in the 18th century, and staging was incredibly important to the Baroque theatre. Stage effects, stage lighting. So what was memorable about Handel's Rinaldo, there's some squeaking, rolling waves in the background. What was memorable about Handel's Rinaldo, and documented at the time, was the spectacular staging. So we know at one point there was live birds on the stage. We won't have that here. Neither will we have fire or water. But we've managed to give a sense of the Baroque through this kinetic set. In the 20th century, the role of the set designer becomes increasingly important. We're here in the Leningrad section of the exhibition, where we look at Shostakovich's premiere of Lady Macbeth at Metzenks. What's interesting with opera at any point is it's at the forefront of technology. It's always encouraging the kind of progressive creatives and the progressive technicians and trying to push forward ideas of new staging. So whether it's sort of moving into the 20th century where you're looking at electric lighting on the stage, or whether it's now with incredible new mapped video projections, there's always a new idea on the stage in opera.
Kate Bailey from the V&A there, and that exhibition covering 7 operas in the cities in which they premiered is open now. Puccini and his librettists put the city of Paris centre stage in La Bohème. Stuart Lang's designs for our new production reflect developments in technology that changed the face of cities. The dramatic entrance of a parade of electric street lamps, for example, at the end of the second act being the most spectacular example. Well, joining me now to talk about Paris and Puccini is the broadcaster, writer and academic Flora Wilson. Flora, lovely to see you. So Paris held an almost mythical status for writers and composers in the 19th century. What was its appeal?
Well, it's really hard to actually overstate the sheer prestige of Paris. It was where the money was, basically. So for composers throughout the century, it was the best funded opera house, for instance, in the entire world. So it was really the place where you wanted to have your operas put on. It was the best rehearsed orchestra. It was the most fabulous cosmopolitan audience. And so in that respect, it really was the center of the world from an operatic perspective.
Lots of competition then, presumably, between composers to get their operas seen.
There was, and it was really, if you could get something put on in Paris, it was really the sign that you'd made it on the international stage, and that really was something.
Well, Puccini certainly made it. There was a great vogue in Italian opera at the turn of the last century to really feature the lives of ordinary people, to get away from all the kings and the queens, all those allegorical figures, and actually focus on real life. What was the context for all of that?
Well, that's actually an interesting one, because that's a moment at which Paris really showed its power culturally. So, I mean, it was French naturalism, it was novelists such as Balzac, it was painters such as Manet or Courbet, who really were interested in real life, in portraying the grittiness of real life during the 19th century in their works of art, that then sort of leaked into Italian literary traditions and then onwards into libretto writing. And so Puccini was really picking up on that. He was at the sort of cutting edge, if you like. He also had his own sort of vested interest in this. He used to say in later life that he was living La Bohème. He had lived La Bohème as a student. As a music student in Milan in the 1880s, he'd really not had very much money at all, and had written to his mother about how he was living off bowls of minestrone, this very thin broth. And so he felt he had this kind of connection. So for him, it was a personal thing.
So he's pouring his life into the score then. We've already heard how he's able to capture the essence of a character in those sublime tunes. But how does he use his music to reflect that more quotidian lifestyle, the ordinary life, the conversational life?
Well, I think it's clear right from the very start of this opera, where there's no overture, there's no sort of big prelude, no staginess of that kind. Instead, we're plunged straight into the action, just plummeted straight into this artist's garret. And so, you know, right from the very start, it's just full of energy, full of vibrancy. And then the way Puccini's actually writing for voices, he's writing in this really sort of conversational style. There's no standing around with big arias, sort of massive expressive moments, except that he manages these transitions from this kind of very normal quotidian discourse, if you like, this sort of normal way of talking in music, right the way through to these kind of just very fleeting but vast moments of expressive power.
Certainly are vast. Very quickly, Flora, tell us about your extremely exciting project, which is an online opera course. You're allowing people to delve in. Tell us more.
Yeah, so this is a course called Inside Opera, Why Does It Matter? And it's the world's first online introductory free course about opera. It's a collaboration between the Victoria and Albert Museum, the Royal Opera House and King's College London, where I work. And basically it's a chance to really get inside opera for people who maybe aren't terribly familiar with it, who maybe they're not even sure it's for them. But it's really a chance to be led through it, guided by experts, to hear from people who make opera today, to see fabulous imagery from the V&A's collections, and to really discuss what opera is about in the 21st century.
Sounds fantastic. Just quickly tell us, how do we sign up?
So you need to Google FutureLearn, which is all one word, FutureLearn Inside Opera, and you'll find the registration page, you'll find the trailer. Enjoy, join the conversation.
FutureLearn Inside Opera. There we go. Thank you so much to Flora Wilson.
Thank you.
Now, Puccini's gift for melody, as we said, is pretty unsurpassed, but how he puts those melodies to use really elevates him into the realm of a theatrical genius. During rehearsals, we caught up with tonight's conductor, Antonio Papano, in his office here at Covent Garden to find out more about Puccini's score.
Puccini starts his opera with a figure, and it goes... And it tells you everything. It tells you that it's cold. It tells you that there's sort of rambunctious characters we're going to meet. And it just wakes you up to an evening of great theater. It really, really, really does. The first tune that the tenor has, where he talks about the gray skies and the chimneys with their smoke coming out of them. Now he's going to sing it this way. we're going to hear that later on in his aria in a totally different guise. He tells Mimi that he's a poet. He writes hymns and rhymes of love. What a transformation. So what was before quite irritable because they're cold and there's no hope becomes the fact is that Puccini is introducing a tune into our brains, and so when it comes back, we may remember it, we may not remember it, but there's something, and that's very, very important. He's reminding us and already drugging us, if you like, intoxicating us to the sensuality and beauty of his talent. There's no question. We get to meet Mimi. We meet her, and she says, "They call me Mimi, but my real name is Lucia." So that theme, we hear that before she's even sung a note, when she first knocks at the door. Who's there? And she says, and we hear this. And this is in the background somehow, this music. And then we hear the music of her coughing, of her illness, which is introduced right away. So this music will be repeated over and over again, but in different guises. But Puccini's harmonic guile and his intelligence and his sense of timing is unerring. In Act 3, the tension between Mimi and Rodolfo has gotten too much for Rodolfo, and he leaves. And she sings an aria, and underneath we hear her theme again, played by the strings in a gorgeous manner. Again, he uses the sickness music. She'll go back to being a seamstress. We hear music from her first act aria, all lurking in the background. This aria becomes a duet. And this is what we heard at the very beginning, where Puccini transforms it and it becomes just heartbreaking. Again, I've spent many years with this piece. It's saying quite a lot about life, about energy, about beauty, about poetry, about theater, and about youth.
The inimitable Tony Pappano at the piano there. His passion for this music is just contagious, and I can tell you that even his office is filled with pictures of Puccini. You can see an extended version of that film, by the way, with a free digital program at the Royal Opera House website. Well, there are plenty more musical marvels to come in the second half of tonight's performance. Mimi's health is deteriorating and Rodolfo is powerless to help, which puts a terrible strain on their relationship. And the snow continues to fall as the winter chill bites even deeper in the final acts of Puccini's La Bohème.
Si desta, salta, mi cerca. Viene!
Che non mi veda!
Oh, rincasatemi, per carità! Non fate scene qua. Marcello finalmente, qui non ci sente. Io voglio separarmi da Mimì. Voglio dir così. Già un'altra volta credetti morto il mio cuore. Manico e gli occhi azzurri e lo splendore. E sei sorretta. Ora il perio l'assai. Non fare funeral. Per sempre cambia dentro. Dei pazzi all'amo di tetro, che lacrime distilla, se non ride sta via l'amore fiaccheroco. Tu sei geloso, un poco collerico, lunatico, imbevuto di pregiudizi, noioso, cocciuto!
Ai collerime, poveretta!
Mimì è una civetta che frascheggia con tutti, un moscardino di viscontino le fa l'occhio di triglia e la sgonnella e scopre la caviglia con un fare promettente e lusinghier. Lo devo dir, non mi sembri sincer. Ebbene no, non lo so, la mia vera tortura. Sovrani cosa il merito, una terribil tosse lesi il petto, le scuote, già le smunte gote di sangue rosse. La mia stanza è una tarascoina, il fuoco spento, l'altra è la gira e la vento. canta e sorride, e il rimorso m'assale, me cagion del fatale mal che l'uccide e fa dunque.
Disoneste. Voglio piena libertà. Io t'acconcio per ciò resto da te, ciò gusta da bene.
Gioiola fa, ti rodi e ridi.
Non batte bene. Io pur vidi
Cosetta,
mi
l'hai vista? Oh, guarda,
era in carrozza vestita come una regina.
e vivo ne son contento.
Bugiardo si strugge d'amor.
Lavoriam,
Lavoriam.
che penna infame.
Che infame pendello.
Oh, Mimi, tu più non attami, o giorni belli, piccole mani odorosi capelli.
Io non so come sia che il mio pennello se pingere mi piace o cieli o terre o in regno rimanere. Eri mi traccia tue pupille nere.
che ora sia
L'ora del pranzo di ieri
e scianazzo
eccoci
e ben
e ben del piatto degno di demostene una linga salata il piatto in tavola e champagne a l'ingaggio ormo champagne mettiamo in ghiaccio
la scelga parole trotta salamone
una lingua di pappagallo grazie mi pippa stasera lascimi nappo. Si bevi, io tappo. Mi sia permesso al nobile concesso. Mi ispira irresistibile l'estro della romanza. Azione coreografica allora. Sì, sì. La danza con musica vocale si sgombrino le sale. Gavotta, minuetto, arella, fandango. Propongo la quadriglia. Mano in le lave. Io tendo lalle la lalle la lalle la lalle la lalle la vezzosa damigella. Rispettiva modestia la prego. Lalle la lalle. Basse. Lalle la lalle. Prima cenno. Bestia. Che modità la che. Se non erro lei col braccio. Snudi il ferro. Pronti, assaggio. Il tuo sangue io voglio dare. Noi qui si sputerà. Apprestate una barella. Apprestate un cinica. E che calza l'attenzione gira verso il microfono. a mezz'ora è morta.
Tanto freddo, e se avessi un manicotto, queste mie mani riscaldare non si potranno mai.
Facil parlar di santa.
Marità, se ci sono avvezza. Buongiorno, Marcello. Scionar colline, buongiorno. A te qui, tutti qui, sorridente a finire.
Non parlar, non parlar.
Parla, non temere. Marcello, date retta, è assai buona musetta.
Lo so, lo so.
A te, vendi, riporta qualche cordial, ma non dottore.
Cosa?
Tu non mi lasci.
No, no.
Ascolta, forse l'ultima volta che ho espresso un desiderio, poveretta, e il manicotto io vo
Vecchia Zimarra, senti, io resto al pian e tu a scendere il sacro monte Orderi. Le mie grazie ricevi, mai non curvasti il loro dorso ai ricchi ed ai potenti. Passar nelle tue tasche come in antri tranquilli. Filosofi e poeti, ora che i giorni lieti fuggire, ti dico addio, fedele amico mio, addio. Suona, ognuno per diversa via, mettiamo insieme due atti di pietà. Io questo e tu lasciali soli là. Filosofo ragioni e verbo via.
fine cinquetta.
La mia cuffietta. Quando sono entrata la prima volta
Se lo rammento.
l'essere spento
Eri tanto turbata, e poi smarristi la chiave.
a cercarla tastoni ti sei messo.
Cerca, cerca.
Io bel signorino posso ben dirlo adesso e lo trovassi presto.
Aiutavo il destino.
Era buio il mio rossor non si vedeva. Che gelida manina se la lasci riscaldar. Era buio e la man tu mi
Addio, Mimì! E vien!
sto bene.
Zitta, per carità!
Sì, per non sarò buona. Dorme.
Riposa!
Ho veduto il dottore, verrà, gli ho fatto fretta. Ecco il cordial.
Chi parla? Non più, le mani allividite, il tepore gli abbellirà, sei tu che mi perdoni, spensierato, grazie, ma costerà. Sempre con te le mani al caldo
Ti ha detto il medico?
Verrà.
Madonna benedetta, fate la grazia a questa poveretta che non debba morire. Ci vuole un riparo perché la fiamma sventola.
io spero ancora. Vi pare che sia grave?
Non credo.
Marcello è spirata. Musetta, a voi. Come va?
Vedi? Che tranquilla. Che vuol dire? Quell'andare e venire? Quel guardarmi? Così?
Well, an emotionally shattering yet ultimately redemptive experience. What a night. La Bohème, live from the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you've enjoyed your nights at the opera. Our next trip to the cinema will be in the company of the Royal Ballet as they go down the rabbit hole with Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. That's on the 23rd of October. But if you can't wait that long, do tune in on Facebook Live in 2 days' time for a marathon 22 hours of ballet broadcasting with World Ballet Day Live. Don't miss it. But with the applause still ringing out here in London, it's time for me, Clemency Burton Hill, and all of us here in Covent Garden to say good night.